So in our last video we talked about the epidermis, and now we're going to be talking about the dermis layer. The dermis layer is thicker than the epidermis. The epidermis is about as thin as maybe a facial tissue, where the dermis is going to be a lot thicker. The epidermis was not vascularized, where the dermis is vascularized. And actually 5% of all blood is stored in the skin. It's going to be broken up into two distinct layers. The papillary layer, and that's the layer that's going to be right at the top, and it's sort of wavy. And then finally there's going to be the reticulating layer, that's here. And you can see almost these little fibers. Those are just collagen and elastin. And these sort of bubbly, sort of fingerling kind of projections, those are going to be the this kind of thing that's kind of going up and down and up and down. That's going to be the papillary. Papillary kind of means like projections or cones that stick up. The composition, like I said, is collagen and elastin. There's going to be cells called fibroblasts, and they're going to be producing the collagen, and that's going to give skin sort of its ability to snap back and do what it needs to do. It's also going to help with another thing called ground substance. And ground substance is what fills in between those fibroblasts and cells. It's just going to be a liquidy matrix, but most of it's made up of water. And that gives skin sort of its smooth complexion. If that was gone, our skin would be really wrinkly. And then we have a lot of these accessory organs. We're actually going to do that in its own video, but you can see there's a whole bunch of organs like sweat glands and nerves and oil glands, and we're going to talk about all those in a separate video. So our first layer of the dermis is going to be called the papillary layer. It's about 20% of the dermis. These papillaries sort of extend up, and they form like little ridges. You could see them right here. They're like these little bumps. These bumps are a lot more obvious in areas like our fingertips or our toes, where we need a lot more tactile information. You'll actually see them kind of come up, and that's what's forming the ridges of your fingerprints. They're just called the dermal papillary or papilla layer, and that's what's forming these little bumps. There's sweat glands in there, and we'll talk about how they work soon, but we'll get to that. What happens here is that they form these little ridges that contain pain and touch receptors. That's why you have a lot more tactile feel with your fingers and your toes than you do any other place. Our next layer is going to be called the dermis, the reticular layer. Reticular means collagen. If we keep going, and we're just focusing on the reticular layer right now of the dermis, we already talked about collagen and elasticness. And if you look at these layers, what you're seeing is that here's the epidermis, here's going to be the layer that we're talking about, and all the collagen is lined up nice and tight. As collagen starts to break down, this is when we're going to see those wrinkling, the shrinking, the skin start to make this sort of odd shapes, and it's just because the collagen, that network that's holding it together, is starting to come apart. This can happen a couple of ways. If you go ahead and do a lot of sun tanning, UV light, specifically UVA and UVB, break these collagens down, and these cells that make collagen and sort of snap them together, called fibroblasts, start to break down and die and don't replace, and that's what leads to wrinkling. Also, the other things that can really damage those fibroblast cells that make collagen really nice and tight, like it should be over here, are smoking. If you ever see smokers, they kind of have that weird leathery look, and that's what they're kind of breaking down those cells. There's also a ground substance. That would be the liquidy substance in between these cells, and that's mostly water. It keeps everything sort of smooth. There's these specific cells that produce this acid called hyaluronic acid, and hyaluronic acid is something that keeps skin smooth, and it's one of those anti-aging chemicals that you see in a lot of pharmaceutical creams that you could buy. And basically what they're designed to do is sort of push into your skin and sort of help aid in keeping this area elastic. The other things that you might find in skin cream is vitamin C. And vitamin C also helps with keeping these elastic sort of abilities of elastin and collagen tight. When you run out of vitamin C or you start to lose some of that hyaluronic acid, your skin starts to lose its elasticity. And that's why there's a lot of money being poured into how we can stick this cells or just this acid into your skin to keep you kind of young. Other cells that you might see, these next group, are going to be dendritic cells and macrophages for immunity. We're going to have, they basically find bacteria, viruses, foreign particles, and then just destroy them. Macrophages will just destroy them on their own. Dendritic cells can call in other lines of defense of your immune system that we'll talk about in Bio 202 and Micro, but they basically aid in that. Mast cells are also in this layer, and they help with this thing called histamine. So anytime you have some sort of allergic reaction and you're getting like bumps or some like redness, that's because these mast cells detected some foreign thing that you're allergic to and started making histamine, so you have this immune reaction to it. If we keep going, there's the hypodermis. It's technically not part of your skin because you could see that here's the epidermis, and then there was the dermis layer, and now we're down here. This is mostly just adipose tissue, which is just fat, and that kind of gives skin its bounce, its rigor. As you get older, this fat layer actually starts to decrease, and that also leads to some of that wrinkling that we kind of see. But this is an energy reserve, and it also helps with thermal insulation.